Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of the Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about Find a Grave. Now many of you are probably very familiar with Find a Grave. You know that it's a free website. You know that you can go there to look up cemetery locations. You can look up burial locations of your family members in those cemeteries. You can submit requests to have people go out and photograph some particular part of a cemetery for you if you need documentation of where an ancestor or relative is buried. Really fabulous service, thousands and thousands of volunteers who go out and take those photographs, upload them to the website so that it can remain free. Of course, it's hosted on Ancestry.com servers. We maintain that, but it is a free service. There are some really cool things you can still do with Find a Grave that you might not yet have discovered. And so today I'm just going to show you a few of those things. Specifically, we're going to talk about linking families on Find a Grave, how you do that, why you might want to do that. So with that introduction, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's just first start on the Find a Grave website. So if you go to findagrave.com, you're probably, like I said, very familiar with searching for a particular grave site or searching for a particular cemetery to have information about that. What you might not be aware of if you're just a casual user of the site is that you can sign up to join the site. So I would strongly encourage you to do that, first of all. You just give them your email, you create a password, and then enter some additional information about yourself so that you have a login. You don't have to sign up to be a photo volunteer if you don't want to, but you will sign up. That way you get email notifications, and it also means that you can access some of these other features of the website outside of just searching. So you want to, let's just make sure we're on track here. You want to first just create a login if you do not already have one. The next thing you're going to want to do in order to link families on Find a Grave is you're going to want to find the memorials you want to link. Now let me just show you an example of what I'm talking about when I say linking families. Let's go ahead and pull up my great-grandfather here. He died and was buried in the state of California, in San Francisco, actually, at the Presidio. And so here is his Find a Grave memorial. I can see here it was created by my cousin, actually it was originally created by the U.S. Veterans Affairs Office, and my cousin requested that the memorial be turned over to him, which is one of the things you can do on Find a Grave once you have a login, is that if you have immediate family members, excuse me, if you have immediate family members whose memorials you want to maintain on Find a Grave, you can request that they be turned over to you. And so my cousin, of course, requested here that my great-grandfather's memorial page be turned over to him. So he now maintains that. I can see down here that the record was added in March of 2000. And then here is, and this is an important piece of information, here is what we call the Find a Grave memorial number. When you start working with groups of families, you want to start keeping track of what those numbers are, okay? Now, when I say linking families, here's what I mean. We see here, this is this memorial that was created by the Veterans Affairs Office, and when they created this memorial originally, all they entered was the information, the photograph and the information off the tombstone. Then you see here there's this section called Family Links, and we have here the parents of my great-grandfather, and we have the spouse of my great-grandfather. Those were done by creating family links. And if I go to any of them, you'll see similar situation, right? So here is my grandfather listed as the spouse. Now in this case, you'll notice there is an asterisk, and that asterisk tells me that this is a calculated relationship. What that means is I didn't actually link my grandmother to my grandfather. I just linked my grandfather to my grandmother. So on his memorial, I listed that she was the spouse, but I didn't do the same thing on hers, but they infer that relationship based on the fact that if he was married to her, then she was probably married to him. Okay. Again, what this allows me to do then is to go through family relationships. So my grandmother and grandfather are buried right next to each other in the same cemetery there in San Francisco. But his father is actually buried down in Los Angeles County. And so it doesn't matter that it's not in the same cemetery. I can just click through to this relationship. His wife, or actually she was his ex-wife at the time, is buried down in New Orleans. And so here I have a photograph of her cemetery. Again, this is created and maintained by my cousin. There's the memorial number. And you can see the relationships, both of which have been inferred because we've added it to their memorial. Now, if I come back here to this particular grandfather, you're going to see some additional relationships. So besides parents, and in this case, multiple spouses, one that he's actually buried with, and the child, we also have siblings. And you'll notice that every one of those is also an inferred relationship. And that's because we've added them as children of the same parents. So if I go to this particular great-grandfather, here we have his parents and spouse, and his children, and his siblings, okay? And so that's what happens is we start to create these family links. And that's important for a couple of reasons. One reason is because it allows us to quickly just click through. Like I created all of these family links, so it allows me to very quickly on Find a Grave jump from family member to family member without having to research for that information. It also, of course, then leaves these breadcrumb trails for other people who come to Find a Grave who might be looking for some of these same family members. By the time we get back to here, this is my, fourth great-grandfather, and, I haven't done a count lately in my Family Tree Maker database, but they had 13 children, so I'm sure they have thousands of descendants, and a lot of people might be looking for this information. And it might be people who aren't even really interested in genealogy per se. People who might never get on Ancestry.com, might never look at a tree or take a DNA test or have, look at a census record, but wondering where people are buried is something that a whole group of people might be interested in when they might not be interested in any of those other things. And so I wanted to make sure that they had information available to them so that they could also follow some of the links in this particular family. So those are the relationships that you can add. Let me just come back here to Robert so that you can see a full range of relationships here. We've got parents, spouse, and children, and those are the relationships that you can add. And then siblings will always be inferred because you have added them as children of the same set of parents. Okay, in order to add these memorials, what you're going to have to do, remember, is search for every one of these people individually and make note of this memorial number, okay? So you do it in a spreadsheet or on a piece of scratch paper or in a notebook or whatever, but you need to make note of that memorial number. That's going to be the key point of information. Then you need to start with one of them, and I did it starting with the most recent generation and then worked my way back one generation at a time. So if you come here, I started with, let's find my ancestor here, Robert, and then Park, and then if we come down here to Fred. So I started with Fred, and I went in and I added his parents and his spouse. And so where you're going to do that is right here under this edit button up here in the top right hand corner of the memorial. And then in there, if I make this a little bigger for you to see, in there you're going to see a link to edit relationships. Now, in this case, because I've already filled them out, you're going to see them here, but you're going to then enter those memorial numbers that you have written down for the parents and the spouses, okay? You can add additional spouses, all sorts of cool things you can do here, okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Submit Edit. And what that's going to do is it's going to submit that edit to Find a Grave and to the people who own those particular memorials. So I can't make any changes on my own if I don't own the memorial, but I can submit that to the person who does. So you're going to edit the relationship, and then you're going to add the memorial numbers of those parents and spouses, and then you're going to click Submit Edit, and you're going to wait. And sometimes you're going to wait a while, and sometimes it's going to happen almost instantaneously. It just depends on how often the process, or how long the process takes for a particular memorial owner to make those changes. Okay, you will receive an email notification when the changes have been made. So you will get notified that your edit was received and that that particular edit was made on a specific memorial. Okay, so you can add parents and spouses, and then I'm going to come back here. So I did that for Fred. I added his parents and his spouses, and then I went into Park and I did the same thing, added parents and spouse, and so now we see them listed here. And then I went into each of these siblings and did the same thing, added the parents and the spouse. And what that means now is that they now show up as siblings to Park because they have the same set of parents. Okay, so again, the sibling relationships are going to be inferred simply because they have the same set of parents. The only relationships you can actually add are parents and spouse. So you're going to have to go into those one at a time and make those connections or establish those connections. But once you do, like I said, I went through and did this family. I did this probably, 6 or 9 months ago. And it took me to do this entire family, 4 generations, some of them with very large families, 7, 8, 9 children who have known burial locations. It took me about an hour and a half, maybe. I was probably watching a television show at the time, and so was a little distracted and may not have been focused 100% on the task at hand at the time. And so it was just something I could do as I searched for those memorials, wrote down the memorial numbers, and then went through and edited each of those relationships. Okay. Now here you can see I have a spouse, but I have no parents listed, and that's because this is one of my brick walls. I do not yet know who the parents, haven't positively identified. I have some suspicions, but haven't positively identified the parents of George Cowan yet. So I have not made that link. That's something you want to be very careful of, which is if you're going to make these changes, make sure that you know what you're talking about. Okay, and anybody can submit an edit, and some of the memorial owners are part of the family, so they're very familiar with the genealogy of the family, and some of them are not. Some of them are maintained by family history societies or cemetery organizations, and so they'll just take your word for it. So make sure that you're submitting accurate information, because this then is out there and it becomes fully searchable all over the internet. Find a Grave is it surfaces really high in search results. So if I was to do a search, for example, for George Cowan and Jane Kahn, Find a Grave is one of the very top search results that would come up in a Google search or a Bing search or a Yahoo search for those particular names. So Find a Grave ranks very, very high in search engine results, and linking these families together actually encourages these memorial pages to rank even higher, because very rarely is somebody just going to search for George Cowan. They're going to be searching for him in the context of a birth year or a death year, in context of a particular location, or in the context of other family relationships. And so another reason for creating those family links is so that Jane's name now shows up on the same page, on the same memorial page with George's, and now it will rank even higher in a search engine search results. So Hopefully that just gives you some ideas about why you would want to link families on Find a Grave. You do need a login. You do need to pay attention to those memorial numbers. Make sure you get them accurate. There is a verification step. You may have noticed, actually, let me just point that out. When you enter the memorial number, over here it actually pulls up the name and dates associated with that particular memorial number. So before you submit it, you know you've pulled the right person, that you didn't mistype a number. I'm famous for transposing numbers, and so I always pay really close attention to make sure that I've got that information accurate. So you add those memorial numbers of those family members, and then you submit that edit. Some people have asked me in relationship to this topic, well, if the edit doesn't occur, how long do I have to wait before I can contact them again or submit it again? I would not resubmit that within a month, for sure. Give them some time. Many of these people have other jobs and families, and they do not spend all of their time, I know, gasp, doing genealogy or working on their volunteer hours on Find a Grave. So we are very grateful for those Find a Grave volunteers and for all that they do in taking those photographs, in creating and maintaining those memorial pages. And this is just one way that we, as users of the site, can continue to make it a valuable resource, can continue to add information and context to those memorials so that it makes it easier for other family members to find them, and so that they rank higher in those search engine search results. Well, short and brief today. I will be on chat in just a few minutes if you have any additional questions about this particular topic. I'm also getting ready to put together the January 2015, cannot believe those words just came out of my mouth, the January 2015 calendar of events. So if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to see addressed that I have not yet addressed in a particular episode of The Barefoot Genealogist, please feel free to email me at the email address there on your screen, ask@ancestry.com. Make sure to put somewhere in the subject line of your email, suggestions for future video, so that I know to key in on that. We get a lot of email at that particular email address, but that way I'll know that it's a suggestion for a future episode, and then we will add that to the list, and then be on the lookout next week for the calendar for January events. That's all for me today. This is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.